What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Established Run NBA Best Ball Recap Show for the 2024-2025 season. A great season for the projections, but not as great as it was for our guy, the Takeaways King. Winky Christ takes home not only first, takes home second. I mean, dude, save some money for us, my friend, my dear friend, who I've known for a very long time, Mr. Winky Christ. We're starting off with you, sir. How you feeling today?
I'm still in shock. I was just telling you guys before we started. I can't really believe what's happening all day. I've been feeling like I'm going to wake up from a dream, and I haven't yet. So I'm just kind of accepting it as the day goes. I'm just like, all right, this is real. I still feel a little bit numb. I didn't even really party hard or anything last night. I was kind of just living in the moment so hardcore because I'm never going to experience this again. So it's like people were offering me alcohol. Like, no, just let me just soak in this. So it's not like I'm hungover or anything. I'm just honestly totally in shock. Still 24 hours later. Is it 24 hours? A little close. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Still in shock. So if I look like a starstruck as we talk, you guys know why. I still haven't fully accepted what's going on.
Yeah, man, you earned it, man. Just major congratulations. That's going to be something we'll talk about for sure today. But we're also going to talk a lot about what we learned and along the things we got right, wrong, all that good stuff. With me, do so. Didn't do a proper introduction. Got to give Winky his due here for just a crowning achievement in the best ball career. But Drew Dinkmeyer is also here. Saum Jafarinia. Dink, how's it going?
It's good, yeah. It's a big week for basketball analysts that went to Dartmouth College returning to the podcast streets. Many of you might be tuned into Zach Lowe returning with The Ringer, but I'm back as well. I know people aren't as excited about that, but I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about best ball season. I cared so much about this best ball season. I have a lot of mixed feelings about the way that things ended for me, even though it was a really, really good season on the whole. And I'm really excited to see where the game of NBA basketball goes going forward. I think a lot of the edges that we've identified might start to dwindle a little bit after the way things played out this season.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk a lot about that. And Saum Jafarinia, Saum also had a really nice finish on the underdog streets there. Got to hike with Saum today and talk a little bit about it. Saum, how you feeling today?
I'm great, Mike. Yeah, just another shout out to Winky. I mean, epic stuff, getting first and second, and what a great episode too to have Drew making his return. So excited to not only celebrate Winky's finish, but talk through more about what we learned and what we can take from it for the future.
Yeah, and just got to show. I mean, we kind of overshadowed. I mean, Winky did so well, but hey, Dink kind of got second and third in the power dunk, and then Saum, you finished in what place again?
Fifth place in the
fifth place, yeah.
Finally, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So I'm a broke boy over here, but I had an okay year too. But yeah, let's kind of get down to business here. Actually, I'm going to go to Winky first. I mean, Winky, you got all the bragging rights now. But I'm just going to hand you kind of a broad question. We'll get in specifics, but coming off the win, what was your first big kind of takeaway from this whole process and things you maybe got certainly right? And we'll dig more down in the nitty gritty as well.
I actually have a specific moment in my brain that I've been going back to throughout this whole best ball season, and Dink's not going to remember this probably. Maybe he will, I don't know. But it was specifically when he entered the chat room when I first started joining the team. And he entered the chat room and he's like, Winky, you're going to be really happy to know that we are just as high as Norm Powell as you are.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's weird. I Dink knows I look up to him like a god almost. When he says something like that and you're in line with, it really just kind of reaffirms everything else you've been thinking, So when he said that kind of just made me very more confident in all my other takes and thoughts that I had going. I was already doing best ball before I officially joined the team, so I was already in the streets grinding. But when he said that specific line, I feel like it just solidified everything for me personally, in terms of my confidence levels. And then we released our projections, and I was like, Jesus Christ, everything that we're way over market is exactly what I've been doing before I even joined the team. And at that point, I was like, all right, it's go time. I honestly, I've been doing best ball for 3 years now, NBA 2 years. I haven't done as much as NFL, but in both years I've done NBA. It sounds stupid to say 2 years. This is the strongest one takes you had left yet. But that's exactly what happened. I came into this best ball season so uber confident, And I wouldn't have been like that if he didn't send that text, honestly. So it sounds so stupid, I know.
Just to tag that, so you weren't mixing. You just like, I'm jamming Norm, I'm jamming whoever else, and you were not diversification, bro. You just like leaned all the way in on it, right?
Yeah, I know that's stupid. I mean, I've seen enough basketball shows to know like you just don't want to just lean all the way in the takes. Like, don't. What's that saying? Do as you say, not as you do. Is that how it goes? I don't know. But yeah, like,
do as I say, not as I do. My dad used to say to me all the time.
Yes. So I have I know we get made fun of often because me and you have kind of like similar qualities, Mike. Once we like fall in love with certain guys, like we just like really just like have a hard time letting go of that. And especially early in the process, because I always just assume like, all right, well, I really love these guys. And eventually once projections come out, everyone else is going to love them. So at that point early, that's when I was jamming them. I was like, I'm going to get as much CLB on this ADP as I possibly can right now. But as it went on and I realized, holy shit, I got 65% Norm Powell. I'm like, all right, now is the time to chill out. Everyone else is caught on. And I started diversifying then.
Yeah, shout out Norm. And then Dink, if you want to kind of take over here, just some sort of big sweeping takeaways. Not to steal Winky Shine as Mr. Takeaways here, but when you were wrapping up this, even middle of the season, towards the beginning of the season, what kind of things were you thinking through that may have some edge that we got or we may get going forward?
Yeah, so let's quickly just kind of start with what were the differentiators of like kind of ETR's philosophy on NBA best ball compared to the market, and why I think this year was so particularly rewarding for ETR's philosophy. And I always want to stress that different in each year is going to be a different environment. We just saw this with NFL, where like if you were a zero running back person and that like you only drafted zero running back teams, and last year in NFL was a really tough year for you, just naturally. And so every year is going to be a different environment. This year was very rewarding for the way that we tend to project things. So I don't know that we'll have another year that will be quite this effective. But essentially, like our big philosophy when it comes to NBA best ball is that durability matters, and that projecting games played really matters. So for guys that have historically had trouble playing 70 plus games in NBA seasons, think about Zion Williamson, think about John Morant, think about Cade Cunningham on the side that we like lost on that one for most of the season, but Cade missed time during the best ball playoffs, which is why I'm saying like everything kind of went right for us there. Whereas guys who like don't miss games, Sabonis, DeRozan, Tatum, Vucevic, Zubats is a big one, never misses games. Yeah. Harden never misses games. These were players that we were generally like overweight on. And in the best ball playoffs, it happened to be that the guys who are those durable guys ended up not missing the games in the best ball playoffs as well. Now, it didn't work out for everybody. Like Tyrese Maxey's been super durable through his career. He ends up missing all of the best ball playoffs and so forth. But I think that was one big point of differentiation for us. And then this year specifically, the market had just really soured on James Harden in the Clippers, and we were really projecting Kawhi Leonard to miss a lot of time. And so that was a big edge that we had during the course of the regular season, was this Norm Powell exposure that we had along with Zubats and Harden that we were well over the field on. And, it ended up getting normalized ADP by the time, the contest closed. But I think those were areas that like we were really looking at advantages. And the last thing that we always look at is where's the majority of the prize pool, and how do you optimize your rosters for where the majority of the prize pool is? And so we talk about playoff schedules all the time. The two different formats between Underdog and DraftKings led to different approaches with kind of playoff schedules. But if you look at, the teams that ended up, or the players that ended up being at the top of the points scored, they had 8 games in the finals. DeMar DeRozan, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Luka didn't know he was going to end up having 8 games in the finals. But if you drafted those, and I know one of the guys who had led Underdogs contests like all the way through until the last 3 days, he had Paolo Banchero, and Paolo Banchero almost got away with it, almost got away with the really brutal playoff schedule because he was so good the whole time that he almost made up for it, but he ran out of games, had no games after Friday. And that games matter so much in NBA DFS because it's the scoring component. So I know people get very excited about the per game excitement around drafting someone like Zion Williamson, or drafting someone like Cade Cunningham, or drafting the John Morant, these players who are like really exciting in terms of what they can do on a per game basis. But if they miss 2 games out of 8, during the playoffs, they're immediately not nearly as valuable as the rest. And this is why Jokic was like such a big advantage for much of the season. People with Jokic had to get through the semis where he missed a bunch of games. But like that's been our philosophy. So that being said, I'm interested to see, because generally the best ball market as a whole, and the best ball market is very influenced by football. Even basketball is very influenced by football. The best ball market as a whole loves young, exciting upside. They don't love boring, durable, veteran bank it. In an NBA best ball, it is so valuable for boring, durable bank it, because the value of added games and being able to play those games ends up adding a bunch of cumulative value to you. So I think a lot of other other voices in the NBA best ball industry have been behind the Zion. Well, what if you get the healthy year? Zion's picked in the 4th or 5th round. He would be a first round talent if you get the healthy year. You get a healthy year from Zion, and everybody's then Zion the next year will go in the 2nd round or whatever. But my point being is like our philosophy got really heavily rewarded this year. So I want to like look at that. I'm interested to see how the market adjusts to that. If they focus more on durability, that's one thing that I'm really interested in. And then the thing that kept coming up for me is 2 things. One, the power of early picks in NBA. I mean, you look at every winning team across formats. They had Jokic, they had Giannis. In the 4-4-4 power dunk, it was Shea. The B-Wakey had Shea. It wasn't Tatum. It wasn't Trae Young. And it's not that those guys were bad. Like those guys were fine. But that getting 3 of the first 25, 26 picks is such a huge edge in these formats with those top players. And so I thought that was a big thing. And then in terms of things that, you can control, you can't control draft positioning. That's random. But I think the value of wings in underdog and forwards on DraftKings, it is so hard to get really high scoring wings and forwards. And I think one of the big advantages that we have in our rankings and our projections is positional scarcity. When I first did our normal positional scarcity run last year, we had Giannis as the number 1 player on underdog, ahead of Wembanyama, ahead of Jokic, because of wing, because it's so hard to get good wing scores. We had Jokic number 1 on DraftKings because of center. Center super scarce on DraftKings. Different games, different positional formats. And who knows how they'll do the positions next year. This can change. But right now, with the way the NBA is, it's so hard to get great scores at wings that you can't really afford to not have like an anchor wing essentially on your team. Like it's hard to hit a bunch of late round wings. And so I think it's just really, really important, early in drafts. And this is something that we've emphasized the last couple of years, especially on underdog and even on DraftKings. I think the forward spot, like it's just hard. If you lose a forward, it's hard, or a wing, it's hard to find a replacement score for those guys during the course of the playoffs. And like, we were doing all sorts of tricks on underdog with the 5-game schedule for Brooklyn and Clowney and Cam Johnson. And Cam Johnson ended up having some countable weeks, but Jalen Wilson, like it didn't work. And then my other takeaway there would be on that note, tanking teams, man, we were trying to find all the tanking teams and all the rookies on tanking teams, Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, like you name it. We were trying to think of them late in drafts because we're like, hey, they're going to get rid of all these veterans. It's going to clear the way. And you know what? Tanking teams are going to tank. Tanking teams are going to sit players, even if they're good, even if they're rookies, even if they're young players that they want to get exposure to. You're not going to get them to play. And so I really think one of the big takeaways for me is really being aware of, I want teams that are playing for something. I want guys from teams that are playing for something. Maybe I'll mix in a name or two in the late rounds and stuff. But generally, I'm going to try to be on more competitive players and competitive teams. And like this is, I was talking about the missed games thing, but this is the LaMelo thing, right? Like Charlotte hasn't been competitive for a bunch of years. They keep shutting them down. And so like at some point you need guys who are going to be out there playing. And I think the best way to do so, especially when all the money's at the end of the season, is to try to layer in more competitive players. Like this year, man, it was just, also like coaching staffs that are going to run guys into the ground, like Chicago and New York was a huge advantage to have those types of players this year. And so I think those will be interesting things to see how the market adapts, because we love new shiny toys that we can dream on. We love Bub Carrington, and he actually did have a pretty good couple weeks in the playoffs. But the majority of those pieces that we took shots on this year, whether Keyshawn George, Cody Williams, Walker Kessler, like whoever you want to get excited about that's a young player on a tanking team, 90% of them were not viable score counters late.
Yep. And I'll bring in Saum here. Anything that, and I'll just add to your point about the tanking teams. We baked that in. Like we were trying. Me, Sam, and Dink. We spent so much time getting the game counts right and like, okay, hey, what does this look like? What does this tanking situation look like? Which is part of the reason why we were so low Denny Avdia, who obviously went ham. But we did kind of do that as well. So that was kind of baked into our projections here. But I'll hand it to Sam next. Sam, just Dink laid out a lot of stuff there. Anything that sort of stick out to you? Anything that you had kind of that jumped out while he was going through all that?
Yeah, and I also think it speaks to the challenge of also just strictly using projections and why we add so much content on top of it, right? Where Jeremy Grant is a player that I first thought of exactly, where we can project amount of games for him, but his distribution of games, at least to this point, has been very, loaded in the front of the season. And I don't know the stat, he's played like 3 games in April the last few seasons or whatever. And that's kind of something hard that's, to put in projections since we can only give a game count on them. But that's something, through content and our streams and everything, really tried to emphasize as far as, when you're picking up players, think about where they're going to be at the end of the season, where, as Drew said, when the price pool is so valuable. So I would just add to that point. And then on the games played part, I mean, I think it's more too like how he was saying games played is a skill. And obviously that was a big part of our process. And not only that too, it's not as simple as, okay, this player has played X amount of games the last 3 seasons, he's going to play this much, right? It's like, okay, why is he missing games? I think Trae Young is kind of the first player that comes to my mind, where last season he misses a bunch of time, right? It was for a broken hand. It's kind of a fluky injury. And he's somebody who's shown in the seasons before that as someone who can be very durable. So, for his game count from previous seasons, he's not somebody we were necessarily punishing as much on a game count as someone as, like Drew was saying, John Morant, Zion, LaMelo, players who have shown that, their game counts being low are due to more systemic injury risks as well. So I think, Drew really laid it all out well. And like you said, for having the kind of focuses we have on our ranks, got rewarded very well this season.
And then, Winky, when you were drafting yours, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to interrupt real fast.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say real fast, I keep thinking about the durability thing that Dink was talking about with forwards, and that was my DeMar DeRozan. Yep. He was on both my teams, and he's not the most flashiest player in the world, but he played every freaking game, and he put up a damn good floor. That was huge for me. And then I was wanting to jump on his tanking teams thing. Like, even if you know the players that are gonna do good once the team tanks, you're gonna get maybe Jamal Sheed out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you might nail that, and the team might think, all right, that guy's playing too good, and just pull that dude out of the equation. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in before you went on, Mike. Sorry.
That was exactly what I was going to ask you. So thank you. Well, I'll ask you. I was going to say, so just to kind of like talk, like, so rounds like 1 through 7, 8 for me, I was like, not to a fault. Like, I was passing on Josh Giddey a little bit more. Sam and I talk a lot about this. So I was passing on Giddey a little bit more, taking a little bit more Bane because I had a little more faith in the Grizzlies competing late in the season than I did in the Bulls. But Billy Donovan, different cloth. As well. So I think you had the same logic there, Winky, were you kind of like taking competitive teams early? And then I particularly love that strategy where I will take kind of the shots on the Jazz, and like with my last couple round picks are probably not counting anyways. Did you kind of have that similar strategy? I know you have a lot of Matas.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of pissed that Matas wasn't on the winning team. He was on the second place team. So it doesn't look as good. But no, that's actually another thing. I was super pissed that I had 3 teams in the finals and none of them had Giddey, and I was like way higher than the field. I mean, all of us were. We were like, he was way higher on HR ranks, but I was like super high on Giddey going into the season, knowing that Levine was going to get traded eventually, and just banking on that. And God, did that pay off like tenfold. So yeah, it sucked because I think it was Chris. Yeah, Chris Unk and our HR subs, he had a Giddey team, and I was just like, this dude is gonna beat me with my own guy, and it was really gonna kill me if he did. That really, really hurt. But yes, to jump on your earlier statement, yes, I usually like to go with the guys that I could bank on pretty certainty, like with a pretty certain, like 1 through 7, 8 rounds. Those are my solid guys, and then I feel like NBA is a kind of easy. I don't say easy, but you could actually kind of see last year's trends. You could see how they did in college, things like that. And you could really kind of like have an idea of who has the upside late. As long as you just nail like 8 or 9, 10 solid guys,
Yep.
and just play the lotto with the last 6-7 picks. You know what I mean? I think it's easier personally. It's way easier than the NFL, where these guys might not even make a team.
Yep, for sure. Because there's like you said, there's 8-9 guys a team that are going to matter there. But yeah, Dink, let's go back to you here. So we talked a lot about like kind of archetypes. You said to maybe not go into the tanking team situation. So would you like? I think probably the biggest takeaway is like safe early is the play. Like I think that's the play. We kind of always thought that way. That's kind of why we did so well. So like, what kind of archetype later would you kind of be looking for? Are you kind of looking for just like soft spots or just?
I throw out some examples of like players that I think late round were probably like we had some concerns about maybe they can't break out, right? Like let's talk about Christian Brown, right? I remember doing preseason shows and people were like, Christian Brown has no upside. How's he have upside? But he's playing with the best offensive player in the world on a team that had no depth, that we were like struggling to figure out projection minutes for them. I kept saying like we need to project Russ for more minutes because like we have there's nobody else to play here, and we didn't go as high on Christian Brown as we could have. And he's sitting there in the last round of drafts, and I didn't take enough Christian Brown last year, so I'm like at fault of this as well. But that's a young player on a team that is going to be playing competitive games late, that scores a lot of points. We know they're going to score a lot of points and doesn't have a lot of competition or playing time. Should be like an easy pick, but like we're like, oh, well, what about Taylor Hendricks? Or what about like, and look, Taylor Hendricks got hurt. Who knows? Who knows what happens with Taylor Hendricks if he's healthy? But what we just saw from the Jazz over the last few weeks suggests that even if Taylor Hendricks was healthy, he has no guarantee to play 75% of the games that they had, even down the stretch. I'll give you another name that ended up being a big catalyst for me on a couple of my contending teams. My team that finished like 7th or 8th on underdog as well, Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels, like young player in a path with Atlanta where they probably weren't tanking late because they didn't have control of their own pick. They're probably competing for a play-in in the East. We talked about that coming into the season. There's a big path for Dyson Daniels. Now their playoff schedule wasn't great, so that like kept him down a little bit. We talked about Peyton Pritchard, a Celtics team that didn't have a ton of depth to them that we thought, and we saw pass like if anybody sits during the stretch and coming off of winning the championship, some of the guys playing in the Olympics, like Winky was all over this with Peyton Pritchard. Like I think those guys are really good picks.
I'll add one more. You know who else who we thought had no ceiling? Jade McDaniels. Like he was really good.
Exactly. Yeah. There's
a lot of them.
And that's another thing that I like. I also have been thinking a lot about like where breakouts come from. And I think, we're all going to focus on like the top end of players that like broke out, like, Cade Cunningham broke out in a big way this year. Amen Thompson broke out in a big way this year. Those are like pedigree talents that broke out in a really big way. Tyler Hero broke out, and you can get to this like second, third year, fourth year players as like breakout candidates. I think those are great guys to target, but I think sometimes we don't think of like the guys who are their third or fourth guy on their team in terms of usage or in terms of opportunity, but they're still a young player that the team's invested a lot of. And there's not a lot of competition to playing time for them. Then what if they get better because they've already got the playing time kind of locked in, and then they're on a competitive team.
About?
I mean, Austin Reeves was, we were in that mold too. But like, I'm thinking like Jade McDaniels, Christian Brown, Dyson Daniels, like these players that are still early on that have pretty locked in roles. We're not even guessing at the roles, right? Like some of the players we were taking late, we're like guessing at the roles. And we got some of them right. Like we got Bub Carrington right. We did not get Cody Williams right. We got like, you know what I mean? Like we just don't know. So I think in a lot of cases, I think those players that look a little boring are a little bit undervalued. And I even took a decent bit of Gary Trent late on, I think it was on DK, because I think he had forward eligibility. But like, I think those players are interesting, right? Like, just like we know the team isn't super deep. They have holes, and these guys like are pretty guaranteed playing time. And so I think that's kind of one thing that I'm going to be tweaking my approach a little bit on next year. And then the other thing that I wanted to note when we talked about Giddey, I think one of the big things that we did last year with our projections that I think we did really well, which is really hard to do, is we baked in a lot of missed games risk on the trade candidates like Levine, and like we tried to temper Vooch down as much as we could, but like we were basically in line with market. If we had projected Vooch like we normally do, we would have been like 2 rounds ahead of Vooch. But like Jimmy Butler, we like tempered down a bit. Butler still rated well for us on UD, but not at all on DraftKings. And I think also correlating the plays that might benefit from that trade makes a lot of sense. You might think to yourself like, oh, Kobe White and Josh Giddey play similar positions. How are they both going to have similar upside together? And we also were high on Ayo Dosunmu, who ended up getting hurt, and that really paved the way for Kobe and Josh to shine. But I think like Bam and Tyler ended up being a great combination, especially with a good playoff schedule after Jimmy got traded. I think correlating some of those teams where the team might benefit from things opening up because the player gets moved, I think is really, really sharp as well.
Mm-hmm. Saum, anything? I'll just throw it to you. Do you have anything you want to add there that to Dink's points?
Yeah, you got all great points. Obviously, I'll just say it's kind of the earlier rounds in that mold a little bit. It's players who are back into situations where we haven't really seen recently, if that makes sense. So in the case of James Harden and Zubac, where Zubac hasn't ever really been a 30-minute per game guy while he's been with the Clippers, right? But without Paul George, without Russell Westbrook, we were expecting Kawhi Leonard, to miss some games. We're like, okay, he has that ceiling now in his range, even though we haven't seen it. We can kind of lean into it a little bit, right? And James Harden, the same with his role, where he's going to absorb a lot of this usage and everything from their departures. Trae Young, as I mentioned with the games, is another one where he had been with DeJounte Murray for a few seasons. Now, without DeJounte Murray, we can kind of lean in more into being that guy he was a few seasons ago. Karl Anthony Towns, where we were actually behind on him before the Knicks trade. But once he got traded to the Knicks, and it was clear he's going to be a center again, well, we kind of leaned more into that role. Like, okay, he's going to be rebounding more. His block rate's going to go up. Tiz with the minutes. So yeah, you guys are talking about the late round. I also think, leading into these situations, these early guys where maybe we haven't seen it recently, but if they can get back into a role where we've seen them really, really succeed, I think that's something to take advantage of. And that really paid off this season.
Yep. And that was kind of why Maxey popped off 2 years ago too. So this is not new. Like we're going to have like baked in trade value. Like we said, we try to do it and then we do the content with it. So I wrote an article about this. Like being able to do that is like so valuable to like on top. Like we can't predict injuries, but you can kind of tell where the trades are coming from, and that's like a way bigger, easier thing, more predictable thing to lean into. I should say. Winky, do you have anything on like the baking in trade stuff? You strike me as someone who like really leans into it?
I do. You know me. I'm like we joke about it in Slack about me being a quote bro, but I'm also a narrative. I'm also a rumor bro. I'm like all those bros. I as a Bulls fan, that one was easy for me because I've seen that writing on the wall. Like, I mean, that's the stuff that I'm reading every day pretty much. And so it's funny though, when the trade deadline was nearing, there was a lot of drum beats on Levine staying with the team. And I was like, oh God, this is brutal. And I was just thinking about my best ball bags. I'm like, I've invested so much in these Bulls with the idea that Levine was going to get traded, but I guess they were just trying to like level the storyline. I don't know, but eventually it happened, and I benefited. But I don't want to say you should lean in too much because that can get you in trouble. I know Dink warns you about it all the time. Don't lean too much into it. Sometimes it could pay out like this. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is like, obviously, if you take a concentrated approach, it can hit on a given year and it can hit big in a big way. But what I would say is, like, if the Bulls didn't trade Zach LaVine, which the Bulls are very capable of not trading people that they look like they should be trading, we all would have been like, man, we were way too high on all these guys. And Zach was killing us for like the first half of the season. Like our projection on Zach, we were well below. Like him going to Sacramento really helped us out in a big way on that front. But I mean, I think all of these things, like Leone's taught me a lot about this, but if you think of your best ball season as 1 week of like NFL DFS or 1 week of NBA DFS or whatever, and it's one slate, then think about how you play one slate if you had like one slate to play in DFS, right? Like, would you play it super concentrated? Some slates you might. Some slates you might be like, I feel like I have a really good read on this. I'm going to go in on this really heavily. And some slates you might be like, I don't know. I don't have as creative a read on this. And I think picking your spots to be aggressive and picking your spots to be a little bit more conservative are totally reasonable approach. But I think anybody who comes in and says like, oh, this year I'm gonna do the same single thing each and every year come best ball time, I think you're pigeonholing yourself. And I think that's what I like got caught up a little bit with NFL last year, where I was so heavy like hero and zero running back stuff, where I was like, this is the strategy that brings the most upside. It's like I wasn't giving myself a shot to win in an environment like last year. Like that, I didn't have a chance to do well in that type of environment. I think if you take each draft as its own draft and be like, okay, this draft, I'm going to be aggressive on this approach. Now that I've landed, Josh Giddey in the 5th, now I'm going to take Kobe White in the 6th, and I'm going to back this up. Or this next draft, okay, those guys went early. Okay, I'm going to play this a little bit more like they don't get traded. Zach LaVine doesn't get traded. I'm going to be out on this situation. Like, I think, taking approaches like that is also reasonable as well. But there's no one way to do all this stuff. That's the one thing that I want to stress to everybody out there who's drafting. And I want to really stress to our subs, because this year was so good for the way that we play. If there's a year that LaMelo stays healthy, like LaMelo the first 4 weeks of the season, I thought, well, that's a big L for us. But the thing is with guys who haven't been durable and they're on bad teams, like you always have an out come playoff time. But if there's a year that like you have to have Cade, like a Zion, this year it looked like it was going to be Cade. There were enough other guys that you could have gotten around, but if it was Zion, we'd be in trouble, like the way that we rank things. Now, maybe the market comes back to us and it's a little bit more level in terms of how other people approach it. But that to this point, it's been that way. And I would say that this year was like as good of a year for the way that we look at things, for the environment to support the way that we look at things.
I actually remember. Sorry, I just remember one specific day. I remember we were in Slack, and I think it was me and you, Mike. We were tilting Josh Giddey sucking, and we were tilting our best ball bags. and then Dink just came out of nowhere, and he said, "It's not the trade deadline yet. We had Giddey ranked high because we expect Zach to be traded, so don't like start tilting yet." And I remember that day specifically, and I was like, he's right. I'm taking a step back, and he was right.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of pull back on, was kind of the archetype of player that like really delivered. It's like Denny Avdia outscored freaking SGA over the last month of the season per game. Josh Giddey was like basically even with SGA per game. Austin Reeves was ridiculous. Zubats was just a mega smash all year, and he smashed in the postseason. Nobody drafted Quentin Grimes, but Quentin Grimes absolutely smashed it. OG Anunoby, Kobe White. Who else is on here? John Collins was good, but just didn't play enough per game. Desmond Bane was really good as well. Ahmed Thompson was absurdly good as well. So, and then Onyeka Okongwu, another guy. I mean, he was my highest center exposure. Absolutely delivered. I took him every time on UD. But yeah, any sort of like structure stuff that we haven't really touched too much on that you noted there, or you realized there? We talked a little bit about wings, but just how much of other positions.
Yeah, I mean, as far as structures go, I think Drew laid it out well in the wings part of it. But setting up your team to give yourself a shot where if you're too loaded in one spot and you run bad on injury luck, you don't even give yourself a chance. Where those late round targets, maybe if they hit, well, if they all hit in the position that you loaded up early on, well, you're not giving yourself much of a chance, right? So as far as the structure point, I would just say that, and we try our best to have the rankings reflect the scarcity at each position. But at the end of the day, we can't, be in the draft and tell you, okay, if you have this much capital at wing already, you need to, go X, Y, and Z at guard and center and everything. So I think just being cognizant while you're drafting of, where you're taking your late round shots in relation to where you spent most of your early capital is really important.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just say, looking forward a little bit here, Dink. I mean, this was, we did project the last month. I've never been so frustrated with doing projections in my life. The last month of the season, like I cannot wait. I like counted how many more days I had left to project the Jazz this season. Like it's like I can't take it anymore. But like the question is, does the NBA like punish them? I think that's like big news we're gonna watch, because if this is on the table again, where these teams just are over the top, freaking sitting out second year players, rookies, mid game, like how valuable is that? And like, do you think it's going to happen again? That's like really important for how I like, because I like to draft, those guys later in the draft, and if they don't change the rules, like that's going to change how I draft. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dink?
I feel like they've tried to solve this problem on two fronts. One, by like slightly flattening the lottery odds, and two, by making the minimum games requirement to qualify for awards and for first teams and different things like that. I think the league feels like that they've tried to allocate resources to addressing those issues. So I don't expect to see more issues. I think they're wrong on this front. I actually saw like Tony Jones interacting with a fan yesterday who was like, if the Jazz draft Cooper Flagg this year, are they not able to tank again for the following year? And I was like, how many years do you want like your fans to be rooting for you to tank? Like this is insane to me. Like it's totally wild that like we can have fan bases who are like, no, I want to watch this team in 2027. That's when I want to like lock back in on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And like that in the league to be like, yeah, that we want that. We want fan bases to be thinking about that. I just think it's asinine. So I hope that they make big sweeping changes, whether it's like full flat lotto odds or whether it's heavy fines and punishments or whether it's the wheel type lottery system. I just think or having a playoff to determine like you could have a playoff to determine draft order. Like while the playing games are going on, you could have, and the worst ranked teams, maybe they get buys in the play, something to address it. But
I have another idea that I heard. I forget who came up with this, but you can't tank twice. Like if you're below 30, I would forget like 33 winning percentage. So that's 27 wins. Like if you're below 33% winning percentage, you're at the end if you do it again. I think
meaning the following year from a draft order.
I like that.
If you tank once, like then if you tank again, like you're at the end. Like too bad.
Yeah, I think anything to improve it would be great. I mean, I just think the quality of basketball in March is so bad. I mean, we're recording this before the college national championship game. I've actually really enjoyed watching March Madness this year because I think the quality, and I never say this, I'm a guy who's always like the NBA quality of basketball is so much better. The quality of the like Elite Eight and on for college basketball has been better than 60% of the NBA games that are going on in terms of competitiveness at this time of the year. And I never say that. I'm always the guy who's like, the pros are more talented, they're more skilled, you're just not seeing it. But this March and April basketball this year has just been awful outside of when two teams in the Western Conference that are really good go at each other. Those are like, there's one game a night that you like lock in on. You're like, that's our game to pay attention to. And I think the league needs to really like adjust on that front, but I don't think they will, because I think they're viewing like they need to make more changes towards 3-point shot volume and different things. Like, I think they just have their eyes on the wrong thing. I think the whole thing is if you have the focus on the game and the games are competitive and entertaining and you focus on promoting young players and like, I think you have a great product. I think there's when I'm watching basketball in October, November, December, I know it's the peak of NFL season. I know there's a lot of good college basketball going on at that time for people as well. I think the league's in such a great place. And then I come March and I'm like, God, just get me to the playoffs. Just get me the playoffs, please. Like the playoff basketball is going to be so good, but I got to endure this crap. And I think at some point I would hope that the league tries to address that problem specifically.
Yeah. And then Sam, do you have any thoughts? We didn't ask you too much about that. Like, were you swinging on tanking teams, and would you do it again, knowing that like you can get rugged? Like your rookie that breaks out could be too good and like get rugged.
I wouldn't say as far as the late round goes. I mean, at that point, you're just really taking shots. I'm not too worried as far as like theirs goes, but certainly at the beginning of drafts, it certainly I was very cognizant of, and like. The Utah Jazz was a team that had a really good playoff schedule. And so how do you balance that with what we thought was going to be?
And wings. Larry Markkinen and John Collins. Like that was a problem.
Exactly. So in our rankings, we're boosting Jazz because, they have this great playoff schedule. We really value that. But it comes back to like my earlier point about Jeremy Grant, where this distribution of games where Lauri Markkinen is so likely to be sitting out at the end. That's the delicate balance. So I personally, I was building that in, but mostly at the beginning of drafts. Once it got late, I wasn't too worried. I was more focusing on upside rather than situation. That's a delicate balance. And we knew it this season, where the last season with the draft with, Zachary Alexander Sarr wasn't as extreme because that draft class wasn't as strong or seemingly strong as it is going to be this upcoming one. So certainly something I built in, but it was more about those early rounds, and we're seeing it right now where Lauri Markkinen hasn't played consistently in over a month now, it feels like.
Yeah, and
I want to put it on the record that Filipowski was a good pick.
He was. He counted for you, right?
He counted. Yeah, he counted in one round for me. But it's like it's fine. It's needle in a haystack. Like Filipowski ended up being the guy, but Cody Williams wasn't. Collier and Keontae George were okay. Keontae George ended up missing enough time that he didn't count very much for people during the finals. Collier, I don't think was on people's radar as much. So it was not easy to find those guys. Tijan Salon, like Charlotte was tanking. He wasn't able to play. So like
he would have counted either way.
Yeah, but my point is like those were the types of like tanking teams we were like trying to take shots on late. And so like, yeah, there's going to be a needle in a haystack that you'll find with Bub Carrington, with Kyle Filipowski. I think you could be better off, I think, taking guys like Jaden McDaniels, Christian Brown, Dyson Daniels, Peyton Pritchard, like locked in roles. You kind of know what you're getting. You don't have to guess at it. Like, I guess my point being is like, if these drafts were 30 rounds, like I get it. But they're 20 rounds, 18 rounds or whatever. And so like, you don't have to pick somebody that you're guessing at what their role is going to be down the future. You can pick the player that you know the role is going to be the same and their team isn't tanking. So like you're hoping in these spots with the extreme tankers, you're hoping that the guy is going to break out and be a good enough player that he can score fantasy points. Then you're hoping that the team is not going to shut him down because he's not too good. Then you're hoping that like they clear the way roster wise. And you might get two of those three things right, where the other guys, you're just like, okay, I hope that he just plays better than he's played so far. Like we know his role on the team. And with guys that are in their second, third, fourth years, that are these young players that were like lotto, mid first round picks, I think it's worth taking shots on those guys to just have that natural improvement. You only need to get one thing right instead of getting three things right.
Yeah, I want to kind of hone in on the rookies because this class was really bad, and I kind of want to just run through all this stuff. Like Ricochet was like, I don't know, he's underperformed.
He was a good. He was one of the better picks though of the rookies. Like in terms of best ball, he like came on in the second half. He was a wing. Which like the other thing about this is like, where are you taking your shots? Like Bub Carrington hit about as well as he could have. And that's maybe one scoring week that you were able to get because guard is like such a high barrier to clear, right? Yeah. So like if you're taking your shots at wing or at, center on DK, we'll see where the positional scarcity is next year on this stuff. But I think that matters as well. Like I think you want to be like, you want to give yourself a lower bar to try to clear with some of these situations.
Yeah. I will say there were so many picks that were like, oh my God. Like I knew they were, I like to draft rookies, but there were so many guys who were going like, I mean, Zach Edey was going so early at the end of best ball. Like he was going like 50th on DK. It was absurd. And then, I mean, people were jamming Reed Shepherd because he played well. People were really taking Klingon pretty high, which worked out kind of at the end. Like so many.
Same with
Dillingham.
Dillingham. Yeah, Dillingham's another good example. He's Misi too, and we were low on Misi. We missed on Misi. We missed on Klingon. Connect was another guy that people were drafting a lot of. You had to see like the Lakers really bottoming out for that to work, or him getting traded. It was a bad rookie class, and maybe that all changes when next year's class, because next year's class is very good. Maybe that'll change in terms of the enthusiasm towards the rookies next year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to close on. It's like, are we like throwing this out, or are we like would you be willing? Because the price is going to be too high. I feel like I feel like people aren't like, oh, it didn't work last year, it's going to work this year. Like, do you think that the market will adjust from rookies kind of airballing for the most part here, or they're just like, oh my God, it's Cooper Flag, it's Dylan, yada yada yada?
Yeah, I think that's my biggest question going into next season really is how it's going to be for rookies. Because we saw 2 seasons ago, particularly with Victor Wembanyama and Chet, where they have just these, insanely elite rookie seasons, right? And I think while the draft class, everyone was a bit down on it this season, they were still going quite early for what I think was the perceived thing. So I think while there was some hits, as Drew was saying, Zach Ricochet, but most of the rookie picks did not really pan out as far as ADP value. Going into next season, is there maybe an over-adjustment back to being more conservative on rookies? I don't think so. I still think it goes back to that point, Drew, at the beginning of the episode, talking about the new shiny thing as far as when to go up. So I think that's really the biggest question is how does the market react to these rookies? And I'll just say from our perspective, too, these are really fragile projections for us, right? We don't have much to go off of, right? We're looking at every input we can with these international guys. We look at summer league, preseason. We're trying our best, but, really, we don't have a great idea. And talk about even Zachary Ricochet as the number one pick. Number one picks are usually locked in for 30 minutes per game, barring some exceptions. Zachary Ricochet, while he's even played pretty well this season, he's only at 25 minutes per game, and so we're not going to project a number one pick for 25 minutes per game. So there's a lot of fragility in that. My expectation is market will be right back really high on these rookies, and we'll see how we'll adjust to that. But certainly this season, more of these rookies than not didn't pan out for where they were going.
Yeah, so the guy we didn't touch on, I just wanted to make because people are probably screaming while listening to Stephen Castle. Yeah, Castle was great down the stretch. He needed De'Aaron Fox to get hurt for that to like open up. You didn't know that when you were drafting. You didn't know De'Aaron Fox was going to be a Spur. Nobody knew that. But you did need that situation to play, and Wembanyama to get hurt.
Wembanyama, yep.
Yeah, you needed that situation to play out to really unlock Stephen Castle. He wasn't like a big winner. Now I will say, I think our rankings. No, it was Keldon versus Sohan that we were high on Keldon. Keldon ended up being fine in the playoffs, but I think we like missed there generally. But yeah,
Sohan was going nuts the first 3 weeks.
Sohan was going nuts the first few weeks of the season. We were a little bit nervous there. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting bounce back. The one thing I'll say is like when you ask if market sentiment is going to change, it's never going to change on young players. Everybody is always going to want young players. Everybody's always going to want to find the next thing because the times like our brains, the way our brains work is the times that you find something that you think nobody else is on, or you think they're the first to it. My God, the dopamine just like floods into your brain and you remember it forever. And I swear to God, we all do this. All of us, we forget every single situation that we ever did that with the guy, unless it fails so spectacularly badly that we've been reminded by our buddies about it over and over, because we don't remember like, oh yeah, I was drafting like Harold Miner, like he was the next, like, Michael Jordan or whatever. Like nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Nobody remembers. But that one time you hit on somebody, people remember. And so I think, the appetite for young breakouts is always going to be there. And I think the best way that I could put it is if you're going to reach on younger breakout players relative to where our rankings end up saying, I would want to do it on situations where I think you can see the path to playing time being very secure, and on positions that you think the bar to clear is lower, just generally. And that's why like Stephen Castle ended up being a great pick on Underdog, because he was a wing player on Underdog. Yep. And that was super valuable to have that kind of score like late in the season to bail out when other wings were hurt or whatnot. So I think you want to just like try to stack odds in your favor by like, okay, like Zach Edey, there was so much playing time threat there. That was like so risky, even though that's a contending team. Castle, there was definitely playing time threats, but at least it came at wing. Whereas Edey was coming at big. Like there's so many bigs that you could get a Kongwu in round 15 or whatever.
I mean, Zoo was going like 2 rounds later than at the end of it, maybe 3, which is insane. The last point I wanted to make before we kind of move ahead, I just wanted to note like the stability of the standings. I mean, just looking at the standings right now, like we got one team that like came out of nowhere and was consistent, and just like trusting the standings, I think it's like important early on to like know you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot. Of course, there are exceptions. I mean, the Sixers are really the only exception, I would say. Maybe you could talk about the Jazz, but in general, I think the teams, I think that's something to lean into, like, kind of trust. Go ahead.
I think you would say like the Pelicans were a pretty big disappointment this year, but they had a lot of injury risk on their team. We talked about how thin their team was, the injury risk that they had on it was Zion. So Brandon Ingram at the time. But yeah, the one surprise in the East, right, is Detroit. Like Detroit comes out of nowhere. Nobody was projecting Detroit to be a top 5-6 team in the East. And that's a team that's loaded with young players that have kind of been building. And so, if you took a shot on them, you were right. But yeah, otherwise, like the teams in the Western Conference playoff run last year are the teams that are in the Western Conference playoff run this year. The teams that are in the Eastern Conference playoff run last year, with the exception of Detroit, are basically the same teams again. Detroit just replacing Philadelphia. Philadelphia was an older team that had a lot of injury risk to it as well. I think that's very notable that like the standings year over year, like especially if you look at like the win totals, Vegas is pretty good with this stuff. Like the books are pretty good at setting the win totals in general. Like a lot of these win totals are coming down to the last few games. Like you can kind of just separate and sort out like which teams you want to focus on.
That's kind of what I was getting at, is like trusting the win totals and maybe like baking that into projections a little, and like, boost guys who are, more later in the year. But one last kind of roundtable topic before we kind of give like big picture takeaways or anything that we didn't hit on yet. I want to talk about just like product improvement that we saw from DraftKings and Underdog. I know Dink feels pretty strongly about this the most, so I'm gonna let Dink go first, and we'll follow along.
Yeah, so people are going to think that I'm going to talk about the live scoring and whatnot. I kind of, I threw a tweet out there criticizing Underdog for what was just an awful live scoring situation for the finals. I thought Underdog's product was great all year until the playoff, and then I thought it was just a terrible sweat, and hopefully they'll fix that. Jeremy Levine had tweeted back saying that they're going to have a focus on that. But the thing that I would most like to improve in terms of the product for NBA best ball specifically and maybe this needs to be done with NFL as well, but I think the value of the top picks is just so outrageous compared to the back end picks in fantasy basketball that I think you need third round reversal. And for those who are not aware of what third round reversal is, so in a snake draft, if you pick first in the first round, you would pick last in the second round. So you, on a 12-team league, you'd have the first pick, then you'd have the 24th pick, but then you pick third in the first round or in the third round again. So you have 1, 24, 25. So you have 3 of the first 25 players. I think you should have 1, 24, 36. I think it should go back to the 12th place team that gets 12, 13. I think they should get 25. They should have 3 of the first 25 players because they're getting stuck with like the pick in the last round at the end of the round. I think we did as well as we could have with guys with how we projected the back end of the first round and the early second round. Like we were on Trae Young, we were on Jason Tatum. It did not matter. It did not matter. And the teams like, you know, Winky's 2 teams that finished 1 and 2, they had like, I think 3 overlapping players between them, but they were the same roster build because it's early draft. So it's Jokic and then you get a guard, then you get a wing and then you bring it back around and you only count 7 spots on DraftKings in total. So like if you get 3 of the first 25 picks and you're only counting 7 spots, it is such a massive advantage. That and positional eligibility, like for the love of God, DraftKings, your guys that are centers during DFS season, they got to be centers during best ball season. I cannot deal with another season where Jokic is a center, but Wembanyama is a forward, Giannis is a forward, Sabonis is a forward. And so the advantage to drafting Jokic, I literally think if you drafted Jokic this year, if you just got the number 1 pick and you selected Jokic, I think your equity in that team was 2.5 times the entry of that team right off the bat. That's a dumb game that we shouldn't be participating in. Like you've got to smooth out. And I understand it's the nature of like, if one player is so much dominant than everybody else, what do you do? But you can't give, Karl Anthony Towns a forward, Chris and Chat.
So many.
There's so many of these guys that literally it was Jokic and then Embiid. And then the next best center after that was like Mobley or Şengün was the center.
Bam,
and then it was like Bam, Mobley, Vucevic. And then we're off a cliff. And thank God for what we did with Zubats, and thank God for the season that Zubats had, because it gave you a chance to compete with some of these teams. But if you look at, for example, the difference in the winning teams on DraftKings versus Underdog, and I just want to note this, which like it's very hard to look at the winning teams on Underdog because you can filter anything other teams. But somebody replied in the links with a link to the exposures to top 10 teams because they had gone to the database on it. And Giannis was in 70% of the top 10 teams on Underdog, which shout out to Saum because he finished 5th without a Giannis team. That Giannis sit was very valuable for Saum to climb that leaderboard on Sunday. But he was in 70%. Jokic had had the highest advance rate overall on UD, but was not in as many winning lineups. And I think part of that is the nature of the positional scarcity, right? Where was Underdog most scarce? Wing. Where was DraftKings most scarce? Center. So this positional scarcity stuff, and this is why like we're selling the best ball package separate from like our season-long projections and ranking. I don't think you could take our season-long projections without adjusting them for positional scarcity and draft well in these best ball contests. And that's why some people will ask like, oh, this random X site started another best ball contest. Are you guys going to do rankings for that? And I'm like, it's a whole thing. So like, there's got to be enough support or interest from the customer base to do it because it's not just a one-off thing. It's not cut and paste because you need to tell me how many guards, who's a guard, who's a forward, who's a center, and how many of them, and where's the cutoff on like the draftable guys. It matters so much. And so I really think like for my product improvement, it's like third round reversal. I would love to see that. And I would love to see some balancing of positional scarcity. And Underdog could do this too. There have been years where there's wing level players that are listed at guard. And it's like, just go about it and try to balance out the positional scarcity of your game a little bit. It makes the game so much better.
Yeah. Winky, do you have anything you wanted to add? I think Ding covered all mine. But do you have anything you want to add, Winky, on things you want to see next year from a product standpoint? You muted? Nope. Can't hear you.
No.
We've lost you, Winky.
Lost Winky.
The champ is dead.
I'll just add while he figures out the audio. I would say, Drew made great points. I would just say for myself, I would say I would want more contest variety, I think, going forward. I know right now it's kind of limited by just, NBA basketball is really just getting going now. So I understand it's pretty small relatively. So you can't have a bunch of contests different ways. But as it does get bigger, I'd like to see different contest structures, maybe, more regular season focused. I know football, they have like a weekly winners kind of contest. So I just like to see more variety in the contest going forward as NBA basketball continues to grow.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, I think third row reversal and just the positional, like, it's just so annoying to like, man, you missed the boat on UD for a wing, and you just know you're dead. And it's just like, all right, I'll just do my best, and then take freaking 8 wings to wrap up your draft. Winky is back. Winky, we got you or no?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. So Saum just added like more variety. And yeah, I don't really have much. Dink just got all my notes. Do you have anything that you wanted to add on product improvement?
No, Dink pretty much nailed everything. I have a thought on a strategy just based on the positional scarcity. I know before the season we were kind of pushing the idea. One thing that was heavy on my mind during the finals was I was very happy with my Jokic team that made it through the semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about how that semifinals team missed 5 Jokic games. So how we were just talking about how it was hard to advance a Jokic team. Do you guys change your strategy at all on like you thinking 2 centers is okay because of that? I know that team didn't need more than 1 center. It actually only needed Bam and Jokic, but I had Filipowski on the bench. But I was thinking about like, because I still have a hard time always taking 2 centers, like even with Jokic.
Yeah.
It's just a personal preference. And then as that was happening, I was just like, I'm glad I took 3 centers. Even if Filipowski doesn't matter, I feel a little bit better about that team's chances of advancing. I just want to know your take on that.
Yeah. I think it would really depend on how strong you felt you were at the other positions. If you ended up in a spot where you had taken Jokic and then you had gone guard at the 2-3 turn, and then like literally no forwards were available that were like even within the realm on rankings, and you're like, oh, well, I'm another guard and I'm another center now. Like I would stop at that point because you're going to need the forward depth at some point. But I think I was always a proponent of like Jokic and punt completely. Like my Jokic team, I drafted 1 Jokic team. I didn't have many this year. Maybe it was last year because I had more last year that I did not draft a second center on DraftKings. I was just like,
that would have fucked me over, right?
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but Jokic is so durable that I'm just going to deal with it. And if he misses like 1 game, because he had never missed like 3 consecutive games, and he ended up missing like 4 consecutive games. But I think the extra variance that you get on the dart throws late is not worth not having reinforcements at that position. Certainly for a second center, I think it depends on the quality of your second center. Like if you went Jokic Bam, I don't think you should take a third. If you're like Jokic Zubats, more questionable. If you're like Jokic Okongwu, probably taking a third. Like I think it really depends on the quality of that second one as well.
I took a lot of Joker. I took a lot of Joker Zubats when I had on Joker. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sam?
That's what I was just going to say. My underdog team that finished 5th was just a Joker and Zubac team, where I'm basically saying, Jokic, I'm banking on the dependability. Zubac will give me enough, and I'm just going from there and then just load up on Wink, where I'm going to need a lot of reinforcement.
Yeah,
with you there.
Yeah, that was my main question I had.
Yeah, and it'll be case by case. We'll see and please don't do this again with the opposite. Actually, I know one thing. I mean, I like, Dink mentioned these are only 20 rounds. I would love a 30-round basketball draft. Like, give me all of it. I'd be all about that. But,
Sicko stuff.
Yeah, give me a 20-team, 20-round. Like, I'd be in heaven. All right, let's
watch Jazz games.
Yeah, man. Let me get the 12th man in the rotation and draft him.
On that note, Mike, I was going to ask, like, only 7 players scoring on DraftKings. Would you want more players scoring?
Well, yeah. Of course.
Like I don't think that, like, I think the skill in a lot of these games is being able to draft more players that are going to have counting scores for you.
Yeah.
And I think 7 is just a little bit light with where we're at now. And UD is only 6. UD is fewer positions that you're drafting. I'd like to see us get a little bit deeper into the number of players that are counting for you on a given week as well. I think it would reward the deeper teams that are being drafted better. And I think it would open up a little bit more strategy as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at because I had a lot of my I think 49 of 150 get through, and like I only advanced I think 3 out of the second round, and I can't tell you how many teams I had where the guy who didn't count was like just below the guy that counted on like every scenario, and so had it been another utility, like I probably would have advanced like 4 or 5 more. So I would love that, but I don't think I'm gonna get it.
Do you guys prefer the 2-week scoring periods or the 1-week scoring periods? Underdog this year was 1-week scoring periods that cumulative during 6 weeks. DraftKings was 2-week scoring periods that each round was a 2-week scoring period. Winky, I'll start with you. I mean, you might be partial to DraftKings now that it's made you very rich, but do you have a preference between the 1-week or the 2-week scoring periods?
I think I prefer 2 weeks now, and probably to what you were saying. It just, I don't know. It just gives you a little like a comfort blanket, knowing like, yo, even if you had a rough first week, you have that other week coming, and I feel like it rewards like the better play long term, and rather than just higher variance in 1 week.
I agree. I like the DK format more. Yeah.
I'll do the Zag then. I'll say the 1 week just because I think there's more of a strategy advantage if you do stack your games correctly and kind of play the schedule right. I think 1 week is more advantageous, but you guys make a good case for the 2 week too.
I'm with Saum. I'm also like the big thing for me is, so let's say I think the 2 week thing just really rewards durability in like an unbelievable way.
That's
like I think durability is just so much more valuable in the 2 week than the 1 week. But I think the 1 week also, it allows deeper parts of your roster to contribute. I know some Blake in chat was noting this as we were recording the show. It's like hard to get guys over an 8-game or 7-game stretch that are your back end picks to actually count on DraftKings, because like they've got to play all their games. Then they've got to have really good games like Dyson Daniels and Christian Brown and Jaden McDaniels. It's hard to get those guys to count. Whereas on UD, you're using like more of the full roster. I like the 1 week increments that aren't elimination after 1 week. So I loved the UD format this year. Like the UD playoff format this year is my dream format. 6 weeks, cumulative scores each week broken up, because the worst thing that you can have happen, like my most frustrating thing is like you get like the break off on when guys miss games is so wildly important on DraftKings. Like if you're at the end of your week and you get a guy to miss a game, and it's like, well, all that stuff that they did in that first week, or like Kevin Durant, perfect example on DraftKings. If you had Kevin Durant in the finals, he had an awesome first week, and then he got hurt the second week, and then you're just sitting there staring at your Kevin Durant score all the rest of the week. Like, I just need somebody to come up and score enough to count him. I'd like to be able to bank that and move on. And as a world-class terrible player at the game of Pig, I would like to bank scores early, as Mike Gallagher knows. And move on from there. But I think UD's format was great this year. I want to add, so everyone just knows this. I had a terrible underdog season. Like I had 40 teams drafted on both sites. Nothing happened on underdog. I lost everything. I just checked my underdog app. It said like $180 back, and I was like, I had everything I just invested. Like, it was brutal. So
I think you'll be okay.
Let's pour one out for Winky.
I just want to let
poor guy. You only got 180 back on underdog.
Better luck next year, Winky.
Yeah.
to be known why I'm so anti that.
Yeah, so that's enough. That's enough. Winky. Don't feel sorry for you. Go ahead.
I do have to give. I have to find this tweet. Here we go. I just want to give a shout out for the underdog, because somebody did compile the data. Who was this that sent me this? At CNTRBUTNNG member on X, David, sent me a Google sheet with the user database. And I want to shout out number of teams that got to the playoffs on underdog. There's a user named DMarks0 who had 57 teams get to the finals. That was number one in terms of number of teams. Number two, Mambatar. Saum Jafarinia.
Oh,
46 teams advancing. The number 2 player in terms of advancing teams on Underdog this year was Saum. Number 3, Chris Lafakis, FAC. So shout out to Chris Lafakis. He had 44 teams. I was 6th on the list with 41 teams. I see a lot of familiar screen names from ETR subscribers, so that's always fun to see. But just wanted to shout out Saum for advancing 46, the second most on UD this year.
Yeah. So let's close it out. Winky, you're gonna get the last word on this one. You're the champ. But yeah, let's kind of close it out here with just overall recap thoughts. Anything that you maybe learned during this talk, or anything you learned over the course of the season, to just kind of get us out of here. Saum, you can go first here with actually I'll add a Winky note. Winky had talked to Winky a bit ago, and he was saying how because Winky had 3 in the finals, which is a pretty big feat. And he's like, hey, getting 3 in the finals is like almost as impressive as getting the championship. So, hey, shout out to you. But yeah, so anything from you, Saum, that you want to just note, just talking through this and just going into next year?
No, I'll just say one more shout out to Winky. I mean, he's just been an awesome addition to our team, and couldn't be more happy for him. Legendary stuff to not only get first, but take down second too in the final. I mean, just really awesome stuff. And what a great season it was. Like, we kind of emphasized at the beginning for the way that we project things and the way that we think about basketball. It was a really successful season. The 3 of us, we were putting a ton of work into this all through the off season. So it's really cool to see the success, not only Winky of us, of all the subscribers too have had their success, like Drew was saying too with familiar screen names. So really fun season. Happy for all the success of everyone, and just shout out Winky, really epic stuff.
Yeah, and I'll just say the amount of times we blocked off 5 hours, you, me, and Dank just like grinding every single detail. And to be right on a lot of areas always feels good. And I'm glad that the subs and Winky, who was on his own a lot of stuff too, did really well. But Dink, anything from you to kind of wrap us up and get us out of here before Winky gets to close us out?
I love the NBA. I love fantasy basketball, and I really do think like season-long NBA basketball is an awesome way to interact with the NBA. I think one of the most frustrating things about the NBA these days for people that are playing DFS, for people that might be playing season-long stuff, is just like how much maintenance you have to do on your team around lock time each and every night. And the league is relentless. It's 5 months of this where you're just like every night, who's injured, who's playing, I got to move this guy in, I got to move this guy out. Like, I think basketball has such an opportunity to end up being like the way that people interact with fantasy basketball. And I really think there's a huge opportunity to continue to grow this game. So I hope it continues to get invested in a big way. I really think it's a great way to interact with the game. Like, I think fantasy football, like the way that it's played historically with season-long fantasy football, is great. Like, you interact with it like once or twice a week. Like, I think people love that. But these sports that the schedule is just relentless, I think these games are really fun ways to interact with the league. And so I hope that we continue to see the growth of NBA basketball, selfishly from a business standpoint, but it's also just like a game that I love to play. So love the opportunity to cover it here tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. As a former season-long bro, I love the best ball experience. So I echo your thoughts there. I think that's been just a fantastic addition and just gives you such good things to do without the full investment. So love that. All right, Winky, you get to talk about your big takeaways. That's what you do. But I will ask you, any plans for the money you won today? Or it's in your account. Do you have any thoughts on what you're going to do and just overall thoughts from this experience?
I just paid off my car payment.
Shout out to you.
First thing I did when it hit my account, I'm like, all right, pay for the car. The rest is to be determined. I was talking to a couple financial advisors earlier today. I'll keep that part under wraps. But I will say, I made a promise to, I don't know if it's promise the right word. I told Nick Redmond from Underdog after I left them, I'm like, I have a plan to make NBA best ball as big as NFL best ball one day. And I know those dreams sound wild, but I will not give up on those dreams because I love NBA to death, and I will continue to keep pounding that down people's throats until they develop the same love for it that I have. I will never stop that, and I hope they get that when they read takeaways. They get that same passion. One last takeaway I will say is I've been thinking a lot about this too. Is I know there's a lot of people in this world or industry, I should say, that they really want to get like that best ball title to like give themselves like a lifelong patch of achievement. Like, I did this, you can never take this away from me. Therefore, everything I ever say about the sport is forever right. Because look at this patch. I won the best ball champion. Like they want to have that honor forever because no one could ever doubt them again. And like I need people to know, like the only reason I even did this year is because I did the work this year. And Mike, you know better than anybody. I've actually remember you saying this in Slack one day, and I was like, God, he understands. Where like you missed like 2 days of NBA one day, and you came back and like the whole world changed. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? And that's actually the reason I started doing takeaways to begin with, is because it's the only way I know how to stay up to date. I have to write to remind myself because there's so much going on. And I just know if I don't keep that grind up, I'm gonna suck next year. Literally, if I miss 2 days from NBA, like I was saying, I'm gonna just lose everything I've ever learned. I feel like in a matter of a year and 2 days if I just stop paying attention. So I don't want that. I don't want people to think like, hey, I just won some sort of best ball championship. He thinks he's gonna like, no, that's done with. It's over with. I'm very grateful. Like I told you guys to begin with, I'm so shocked and so expecting to wake up any moment. But I just know how this works. If I just skip a few days, it's all going to be gone and lost and forgotten. I don't want people to think, oh, everything this guy says now in NBA world, like his takeaways, it's all gospel. It's not. Like my brain works in a weird way. Like I have to keep reminding myself, or else it's all going to disappear. That's because of my old partying lifestyle back in the day. That's a different story. But yeah, that's the last takeaway. It's like I just want people to know, like I can't give up on this. I can't keep working on this product, the craft, the content, all that stuff, because I enjoy this feeling so much right now as I have it. And if I stop, it's going to be all gone.
Beautifully said, man. Beautifully said. So yeah, shout out to the grinders. Shout out to all the grinders who listen. We'll be back next year with the best ball product at probably around the same time. Still grinding it away. Real excited. Always excited to work with the team at ETR. We'll have that out. We'll talk about the roll. We'll talk about it in projections, all that good stuff. So yeah, shout out Winky, first place, second place. Shout out Dink with really nice scores as well, and then Saum as well having a nice score. But yeah, Winky, you're the man. It's great to see you come through. You can never, no one can ever, you're a best ball champion, man, winning the fadeaway. So yeah, this is great. This is super fun. I hope everyone learned a lot, and we'll catch you guys next time.